Try to keep track of that stuff for mainly the same reason. We want to know how many people we're getting out into our community. We want to share a message, talk about things that are happening here in Bartlesville and in the surrounding area. We are in Bartlesville. I hope most people have recognized it by now. If not, this is going to come as quite a surprise. But we are from the George Miksch Sutton Avian Research Center here in Bartlesville. A lot of people in Bartlesville don't realize that we have had a long history here in this town. And so we want to share a little bit about what we've done, what we've accomplished, and what we're working on. The goal of conservation is to always work yourself out of a job. You finish working on one project, and then you tackle the next. So we're going to talk about a major project that's been massively successful, and then we're going to talk about some projects that we're still continuing to work on, as well as how myself and Caitlin are helping to contribute to involving all of you, involving people that are here in our community and out in the world at large. I hope you guys are looking forward to learning a little bit about what's going on here in Bartlesville today. Back up, Owen.
I'm so sorry. I thought you clicked.
Ah, it looked like it, didn't it? All right, so we've got a date up here, 1984. It wasn't just when I was born, it was also when the Sutton Center was founded. So it's a great time. They were founded, the Sutton Center was founded with this goal in mind, finding cooperative conservation solutions, cooperative being the big word here. You can't do anything on your own. As an individual, you can only do so much. You've got to find people and organizations that will work alongside you for common goals. And this is with a unique focus. We decided to focus on birds in the natural world. All of us are living in the natural world. No matter how distant it can feel to have to travel out to go see a wild place, every place that you are is the same natural world that these birds exist in. So we can learn about the birds and their contribution and how it's going to affect us. How do we do it? Through science and education. The science that we utilize is evolving, it's changing, it's growing over time. As we learn more, we can do more. And then education. Everything that we do can only go so far unless we talk about it. That's what we're here today to do, is to talk to you guys about the projects that we've been able to be successful in and the ongoing programs. So we're not too far from you guys. We're on 40 acres just south of Bartlesville proper. If you've been 2400 road, you know, if you're heading down south towards Tulsa, you would find a road that goes two directions. The headquarters is one direction. We've got another facility the other direction. So whichever way you go, you're going to run into the Sutton Center. Got a little bit of influence there. This was a home that was donated to us by the Price family that was converted into use as a conservation headquarters, as the headquarters for the Sutton Center. Now, I mentioned Bartlesville a lot because that's where we're at, but that does not mean that that's our sole scope. Every little green spot that you see in here, every one of these states is a state that we've had major influence in, that we've had a specific project in. That does not necessarily mean that that's where our influence has ended. We've got some influence on both sides of the United States borders. We visit international societies for our scientific contributions to share the works that we have done and the science as it grows and changes. But these are the states that we've had an immediate impact in. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, Connie. And we're going to talk about a few of the programs. We've only got an hour, so we're going to touch on some of these really fast. And if you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer them as we go. So if you have any questions, we'll cover those at the end. First and foremost, what the Sutton Center is most well known for are endangered species recovery programs. There are 3 birds up here right now. How many of y'all recognize one of those birds? How many recognize 2? Anybody know what all 3 of these birds are? That's amazing. All right. Well, some of y'all have seen before, so y'all have seen some of this. But yeah, we're going to start with probably the most recognizable of these 3.
Oh, it didn't fit.
Yeah, it fits. Go ahead.
Okay.
All right. Anybody recognize this bird?
Oh, yeah.
What's this bird?
Bald eagle.
It's a bald eagle. We should all recognize our bald eagles, right? This is a national symbol, a symbol that's been associated with the United States since its founding. And just recently, actually got some official status as our nation's bird, which is pretty impressive. Took a while, but we got there. But believe it or not, something so impactful, something so founding about and meaningful for us as Americans, this bald eagle was on the verge of extinction at one point. We got to a point where these birds were not prevalent in the wild spaces that they'd been seen in for hundreds of years before. And we found out why. This is where science comes in. This is where communication between different groups comes in. I won't go into the whole story because there's a whole book written about it, plus more since then. But these birds needed our help. They needed help recovering from what was a drastic hit to their population. A change that not just impacted them, but impacted a lot of other raptor species. Eagles just happened to be at the forefront of the conversation, so that's where we took it and ran. We were reached out, we were contacted with a goal to restore this bald eagle. So what are you going to do? We've got Oklahoma, a space where bald eagles had historically been present. They had disappeared from Oklahoma. They were no longer here. In fact, it was so impactful that if you did see an eagle in Oklahoma, you might write a scientific paper about it. There was an eagle that they thought was nesting in Oklahoma, and you can find scientific papers that were published in journals because it was that impactful. How many of you guys have seen an eagle here in Oklahoma, if you're in Oklahoma? And many of you that are not in Oklahoma have probably seen the eagles as well. These guys made a recovery, and we're going to show you how. So we'll go to the next. So we had this little dot on the map earlier, right? We had a dot here in Bartlesville. In Oklahoma, we had no eagles, right? To make eagles, you need eagles. So if we have no eagles in Oklahoma, we could get no eagle eggs from Oklahoma eagles. So what did we have to do? Cooperative. Conservation solutions. Cooperative is the key word here. We cooperated with groups in other states, specifically Florida, one of the few places that was not impacted by the same environmental impacts that impacted us here in Oklahoma. These eagles were mainly feeding offshore, so the chemicals that had caused issues here in Oklahoma had less of an impact in Florida. Great partnerships. If I were to go to Florida today and pick up an eagle, and I take it to Oklahoma, and I set it down, do you think that eagle's going to stay in Oklahoma?
No.
Absolutely not. Eagles have this amazing ability to do something we can only hope to achieve, which is flight.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of work for us to get airborne. These eagles can do it naturally, and they can fly very, very far, long distances. It would be nothing for an eagle to fly back to Florida if we were to take one. So instead, you take the eggs. The eggs don't know that Florida is their home yet. So we were able to implement some very, very new ideas when it came to eagle reproduction. If you've watched our eagle's nest on suttoncenter.org, if you've seen an eagle's nest in the wild, you might know that the eagles come, build a nest, lay some eggs, raise some young, and they leave. They lay one set of eggs. But I'm going to show you something a little bit different. This young man was very brave. He went up to that nest just about as soon as those eggs were laid. If you go out to an eagle's nest, and you've got the permits and permissions and all the legal requirements, you can go up and get those eggs early enough that when mom and dad come back and see that there's no eggs, it's still early enough in the season that they can do what's called a double clutch, which means that they lay a second set of eggs. Because of the work that was done at the Sutton Center, and with our falconer partners and conservation partners prior to taking on the Eagle Project, we knew that this would work. So we were able to have an eagle population start from the egg stage without hurting Florida's populations. That's a huge conservation success in and of itself. Now that we have those eggs, we've got a starting point. We can incubate those eggs. We can raise them. You see here, little puppets here. Nothing Jim Henson would be too proud of, but they were nice puppets, and they got the job done. They allowed us to raise these birds on the other side of protective screens. So this young lady here never had an eagle look her in the face and say, "Mama." We don't want the eagles to associate people as being a source of food. We want them to stay wild so that we can send them out to these hacking towers and rewild themselves, to learn to hunt, to learn to fly, and to, most importantly, learn that the area that they are released into is home. Why would they go back to Florida now that they've got a nice home in Oklahoma? Why would they go back to Florida if any of the other states that we released? In fact, go back one stage for me, back one slide. So we released not just in Oklahoma, we released a total of 275 eagles out into the wild. 90 of those ended up in Oklahoma, but you saw those other green marks on some of the other southern states. Those states were also impacted in similar ways to Oklahoma. Not all of them were completely devoid of eagles, but giving a little head start, giving that little boost to the population was able to help their species recover as well. So go ahead and click forward for me again. Fast forward, and yeah, this is good. So I want to show you what success looks like on a graph.
Up and to the right.
Yeah, this looks pretty good, doesn't it? So there is a red bar down here. This line was the goal that was set forth for us. When the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said, all right, Sutton Center, this is what we need to prove that you are successful in your reintroduction of the bald eagle to Oklahoma. We need to see 10 active nests. It's 20 eagles that have paired up and are actively making a nest, making a home here in Oklahoma. We released a total of 90 birds in Oklahoma, right? So that's, at best, perfect world situation, 45 nests. Now, if I release a 1-year-old eagle out into the wild, hate to break it to you, they're not going to nest here. A 1-year-old eagle is not an adult. A 2-year-old eagle is not an adult. A 3-year-old eagle, believe it or not, still not an adult. It's going to take 4 or 5 years before those birds are pairing up. So, from our inception, 1984, remember? We're not going to start seeing nests for at least 4, maybe 5 years. First date on this graph, 1990. What do we see? Nests. Nests start to show up. That first nest is exciting. We're seeing progress. Another couple of nests trickle in the next year. And again, this is nests that we know about. These are the nests that we're able to find. There's a great possibility there's nests out there that we were never locating. Didn't take very long before that goal was met. That's conservation success. Now here's the deal. Once we've introduced these eagles, once we've got these eagles in the wild, if the environment's good, we have clean water, we've got clean air, we've got good, clean places for them to be wild, they're going to reproduce on their own. All of this subsequent from 1994 onward, as you see that we continue to have eagles occupying these wild spaces, we are no longer introducing these birds. These birds have a home here in Oklahoma. Everything from there on is a success story that we can be proud of, that we can be very happy about what we've done here in Oklahoma. And this is just tracking Oklahoma eagles, mind you. Remember, we released in other states. It was so impactful that the bald eagle was able to be removed from the endangered species list. That is an amazing measurement of success. And so we continue to track these eagles to this day. I told you, we're not releasing these, but we are keeping track of them. That said, I don't have enough miles on my car to track every one of these, so we rely on some very, very special people. This is the Bald Eagle Survey Team. I say this is a Bald Eagle Survey Team. It changes from year to year. We get new people coming in, and we're always looking for new people that are interested in this. Bald Eagle Survey Team is a group of people that are not necessarily specialists, are not necessarily biological experts. These are people that care enough to go out into the world and say, you know what, I would like to see how our eagle populations are doing. I want to be part of tracking this information. I want to be part of this community of people that care about the wild spaces here in Oklahoma. So, all you need, a pair of binoculars. Spotting scope if you're really fancy, but a pair of binoculars is all I use. They go out and they will check on these nests 3, maybe 4 times. Once to see if the eagles are going to that nest, if they're present. Another to see if they look like they're incubating an egg. And a third to see if there's those baby chicks, those precious little fuzzballs that we saw in the previous slides. Because of the work that we're doing, we know that we've got healthy spaces and a healthy environment here in Oklahoma. It's one measurement of success. And so this team is so important. And we're so thankful for the work that they do. Right. Now, I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about eagles, even though I love talking to them, and we could have a whole hour presentation on eagles alone. I want to talk about some of the other programs and projects that we're working on. I was talking to somebody just earlier today about our bobwhite. Here in Oklahoma, we have our northern bobwhites. The bobwhite that we're going to talk about today is a little bit different. Click on it for me. This is the masked bobwhite. The masked bobwhite is a desert species quail. They occupy a little bit different habitat than we're used to here in Oklahoma. And this photograph, by the way, is a photo that is included in Joel Sartore's photo arc. If you're not familiar with Joel Sartore's work, take a look. He's got some amazing work and has been a huge proponent of the work that's been done at the Sutton Center. So we're very thankful for Joel. Go ahead and click again for me. But this bird, like I said, is a desert species of bird. So when we go back and look at their historical range just means where they have lived in the past, where we know that they have been confirmed as having homes. We see this giant swath of area, the Sonora Desert. When people think of the Sonora Desert, they think of very dry, arid temperatures, right? This is what we're looking at. Areas that are dry, arid, they do have grasses and forbs. It's not the Sahara. It's a little different. So don't think Sahara Desert. The Sonora Desert's a little bit different. But we have a special portion of this in Arizona called the Buenos Aires Natural Wildlife Refuge. And this refuge was specifically set up so that we would have a place to reintroduce these birds. These birds got to a point where they did not exist in the wild at all. There was no wild masked bobwhites. They were only in captivity. And a few people cared. That's what it took. A few people that were interested enough and said, hey, this is something that's important to our ecosystem. This is something that's part of our natural world. Is it too late? Can we do something about this? And enough people said, yeah, we can do something about that. Can band together and push for this wildlife refuge and eventually the release of these birds. Now this is a little outdated. A third of the world's known population at the Sutton Center. There was actually another breeding facility that that had some problems and unfortunately lost a lot of their population. So even though we have a good population living and existing and wild at the Buenos Aires Wildlife Refuge, of the birds that we know, we've got about half the world's population of that bird here in Oklahoma. That's part of that program. And so we are helping to keep genetic diversity alive. We're helping to keep the birds in a place where they can be released and rewilded, which is an important part of that mission. It's an intensive mission. Just like that guy climbing up the trees. Unfortunately, we don't have to climb trees to get the bobwhite eggs. The bobwhites are producing for us. We can just go in and categorize them, incubate them. You see how long it takes, about 22 days. And when they come out, they are adorable. These little guys, I kid you not, hatch day is one of my favorite days. The bobwhites, when they hatch, give them an hour to dry off, and they are ready to run. They will run right off the table if you let them, so you gotta be quick. But they are amazing little guys, and we, from the time that they hatch, we keep track of their genetics. We are very mindful and aware of what we're releasing out into the wild so that they have the best chance for survival. I want to show you part of this. This is an amazing part. When we have these little chicks and they start growing, they are showing themselves to be physically fit. But when in that first week, we are introducing them to a male, a foster male. Bobwhites are really neat. The males actually take on a lot of the protective role. They take on that role of caring for the small, for the young. So you can see this male here kind of opening up those wings a little bit, allowing them to come in and have a safe space. So this is done at a very, very young age. I want to go and show you a video of this. And it's one of my favorite videos, so I hope we have sound attached to this. Watch this little guy. It's adorable. That sound, again, calling out for other bobwhites. Hey, this is a safe place. This is good. If you need to be someplace, be here. This is a huge part of the conservation work with the bobwhites. Having that imprint, having an adult male that's able to prepare the young for release. Go ahead and click for me. Once we have that fostering completed, once we have that bonded group, they get packed off. Used to be we'd have to take a van, and it was a long, arduous drive from Bartlesville to the Buenos Aires Wildlife Refuge with a lot of stops to make sure everybody's got clean enclosures, that we're giving them water, that we're caring for the birds. And since 2020, Lighthawk, an amazing conservation group, again, conservation with cooperative groups, cooperation between people that have the resources, have these private planes that take on a number of conservation missions. And in this case, they literally come out here to Bartlesville, let us pack up our birds, fly us and the birds, and we're there in just a few hours, as opposed to driving for days. Much more successful. And when we get there, we can release. I want you to watch as this comes out. The first bird out. You see the little ones out here exploring in this new space. And you see the foster dad keeping an eye out, looking around, making sure the area is safe. And even goes back to look to make sure that everybody's leaving the box. His mission, protecting these young and helping them find a covey. Helping them find a group of other quails to join a larger community. Just making sure nobody's left behind. And this bird, actually, you can barely see it, but there's a very small tracking device on this bird so that we can actually keep a lookout and know that they are being successful, know that they've found a group to belong to. And that's how we kind of have been able to measure our success, is to track these coveys, which has become harder and harder to do. But once they're out in the wild, the idea is, once again, have a clean environment, have a space that fits them, their ecological niche, have the plants that they need, and let them thrive. That's the goal. I want to talk briefly about another one of our projects, the Attwater project. This is probably, when I had everybody evaluate if they'd seen a bird before, this is usually the last one that people are like, what is this exotic bird? What is this magnificent, colorful bird? And where did it come from? What are you doing with this bird? Well, I'll tell you what, this bird is amazing because it's a part of a group of birds, the prairie chickens, that have been here long, long before us. These prairie chickens were here before chickens came here. They got their name based on what we knew about birds from the old world, from Europe, from that part of the world. They're a ground bird, but very, very different. And two of the species that are very closely related are here in Oklahoma. Before I talk about this guy, I want to talk about two birds that are here in Oklahoma. The greater prairie chicken and lesser prairie chicken. Greater and lesser prairie chickens have been part of Oklahoma heritage for a very, very long time. And a lot of those spaces are being lost in the same way that this Attwater's prairie chicken has lost their habitat. And it's causing changes in the way that they're able to survive. So just be aware, the work that we're doing, the work that we're putting in to preserve this bird, we can learn a lot about how to preserve the birds here in our state based on what we've had to do to recover this species. Now this bird, like I mentioned, is not actually from Oklahoma. This is a Texas bird, much like myself. So, okay, I'm not a bird, but this bird had a home historical range that was coastal. When you think about a prairie, you don't necessarily think about coastal areas. But this prairie chicken was native to the Texas-Louisiana coastline. In fact, this is a 1990 approximation. There are other maps that I've seen that have a closer approximation of this being much further inland and leading up into Louisiana. But these are places that people really like to be. As a human that likes to be by water, I get it. I want to be in these spaces. Unfortunately, we have crowded out some of these birds that have historically been very successful in those places as well. There are only 2 known populations in the wild. These 2 little red dots. We know where they are. because we put them there. People decided we wanted these birds back in the environment. They were gone. They were not having success. And we said, these spaces look like good spaces. These partnerships with the landowners around that said, yes, we want these birds back into our wild spaces. Those cooperative conversations turned into conservation goals, turned into conservation sites. So we currently have 2 sites here. One of these, you notice, is getting very, very close to this big white dot known as Houston. I don't know if you've been to Houston lately. It's not getting any smaller. It's going to continue to grow. So we have to make sure that we're deliberate in the way that we work within our natural world to have spaces where not just the prairie chicken, but other species that depend on them and the same types of habitat can have a place to thrive. All right, go ahead and click for me.
Sounds kind of
Our prairie chickens have a past. As mentioned, here in North America, the prairie chickens have really 4 representatives. The greater and lesser prairie chickens we talked about here in Oklahoma and throughout a lot of other states that have open areas, open ranges. The heath hen, if you've heard of it, probably not recently. They went extinct. They're no longer here. They're not coming back. No amount of genetic restoration will reintroduce a bird that is gone. You can get close, but it's never going to be the bird that it was. It's completely extinct, and the Attwaters is what we're focused on right now because they are in that endangered status. Again, one of the most endangered birds in North America. I want to show you how cool these birds are. This is a booming. This is the dance that they are known for. See that stomping? That booming? Those beautiful long pinnae, feathers on the head there. Those air sacs, those eye combs. All of those things showing, hey, look at me. I'm an amazing, beautiful prairie chicken. And that's what we want to make sure we keep. We don't want to lose this. And it takes work. These are some of some of the work being done, some of the incubation. You can see a little bit larger than our quail, but very, very labor intensive. It takes a lot of work to produce a prairie chicken and to release that bird into the wild. Go and click for me. When they hatch, again, absolutely adorable. Now we do have regular competitions on which bird is more adorable, our prairie chickens or our chicks. So if you're interested, make sure you go to Wild Brew next year and vote. We take that very, very seriously. But these birds are very, very labor intensive in terms of the production. They require a lot more hands-on work, which makes it very hard. You've got to have a lot of space in the wild for them to thrive. But again, once we get a good population, once you have a population that's doing well, if you can keep those open borders, you can keep those open areas for them to go to. The areas surrounding the release point is just as important as the place where you release them. Birds don't stay in one place. They need large areas. And if they're able to do it themselves, that's the ultimate goal. Once we get these birds to a sufficient age, we are releasing them. A little bit older. Not that 1 week Bobwhite that we released. These birds need to be a little bit more mature before they're likely to survive in the wild. And so they get boxed up and sent off to one of the 2 locations down in Texas, again, with cooperation from other groups. It doesn't end there. Just because we have focus groups, just because we have these focus on endangered species, doesn't mean that can be your only focus. You can have a broader scope. Research and conservation work is of no short supply. There is a lot of work being done out there to better understand our world so that we can make sure that these wild spaces stay healthy and that our bird populations stay healthy. This is one of the surveys. I mentioned our lesser prairie chickens earlier today. Lesser prairie chickens, historically wide-ranging throughout Oklahoma. Right now you can see the survey points as they're listed here. I didn't make the color scheme. Red is actually good. Red is the suitable spaces, the places where we're going to send people out to listen for the booming, to listen for these birds, and see if they're present in these areas in Oklahoma. Again, something that is important to know. If you're not surveying, if you're not looking into these populations, you won't know what's changed. Other pieces that are being changed in the way that we do small pieces of work on our lands. Things like our fence lines. If you're familiar with grouse, prairie chicken, they are not high flyers. You're not going to see them up there with the eagles. They're going to be at a low flying range, which just happens to be where our fence lines lie. Through research, through practice, through trial and error, we found that there are things that are not extensively expensive, that are pretty cheap, but that can save your birds, that can save these wild populations. Something as simple as putting a little plastic tag, a little marker. Lets the bird know there's a fence line there, don't fly into me. It's the same thing we talk about if you've got a window at your house and birds fly into that window, best thing you can do, put a marker on it. They sell specific little bird markers, but I've seen people use all kinds of things just to indicate to a bird that's flying through that this is in fact not a place that you can fly through. So for our fences, just putting that tag, or even best case, if you're only using that land for a few months a year and then migrating your cattle onto other lands, you can just drop the fences. A little more labor intensive, but you can't collide with something that's not there. So amazing work being done. Additional grouse research, working with energy producers. A lot of times in the conservation world, there is a feel that there has to be an absolute one or the other, and that's not the case. Cooperating with the groups that are operating in these areas helps save you the struggle of trying to restore something that's lost. If you can protect it before it's lost, you're going to save yourself and anyone working in that space a lot of work down the road. Click for me. Now I want to talk about one of my favorite projects, the Oklahoma Bird Atlases, long-term monitoring. How do we know that the eagles were in trouble? How do we know that anything's in trouble? We have to have counts. We have to have information. The same thing that we're doing for our lesser prairie chickens, as they are on that higher risk spectrum, we need to know about any given bird. If you're not looking, if you're not measuring, then we don't have anything to compare it to. Go ahead and click for me. Let's skip that. Yep. Sorry. And these surveys are not just things that have been done in Oklahoma. These are things that have been done in various states throughout the United States. And this is something that got a lot of traction here not too long ago. You may have seen this on national news. The populations of birds here in the United States continues to drop. Any of you that are familiar with the old adage, the canary in the coal mine, that idea that something is indicative of something else. Something is happening. When you see a lower population of one thing, that might mean something. When you see a lower population of an entire group of organisms, it might be cause to take notice. Over 2.9 billion, and that's since 1970. This was published in
2019?
Yeah, this was published in 2019, and sadly there hasn't been a change in trajectory. That number has continued to grow. So if you can imagine, over 3 billion birds that existed just no longer existing, that should be startling for many of us. And most impactful for us here in Oklahoma, you notice who's being impacted the most? The grassland birds. These birds are having the hardest time. They're taking the greatest impact. So that's where we put a lot of our efforts.
Stiller's Jay.
Now, we don't always have to focus on the rare. We don't have to focus on the most exotic. In terms of conservation, many times it's a lot easier to keep track of the birds that are already here and doing well. Keeping the common birds common. Everybody said the northern bobwhites were all over the place here in Oklahoma until they weren't, right? Keeping that bird common is way easier than changing the habitat to bring them back. This is the part I want to talk about that bird atlas. Our bird atlas is an important part of this conservation work because it lets us know what's currently here. Of those common birds, how often are they seeing them? Are they just as common now as they were 10, 20 years ago? Having that information, the science of change, what's changing in our environments in these populations is going to guide how we can work within it, how we can talk about changes in our environment. Having this bird atlas is a big piece of that. So our first breeding bird atlas, the Oklahoma Breeding Bird Atlas, that was published back in 2004, 20 years ago.
21. It's 2025 now.
21 years ago. I've been saying this since last year. This is why we have Caitlin here, is to keep my facts straight. So, over 20 years since this initial atlas was put together, that's not enough. Things change. You better believe those birds don't stay put. They're not going to be in the same locations necessarily and of the same quantities. So reproducing, doing something more than once and seeing if there's a change. We're currently putting together a new revision of the breeding bird atlas, an updated atlas. That comparison between what was here and what's here today can help us guide policies and changes in the way that we manage our wild spaces. If you're interested, I'm going to have one of these up here in a moment if you'd like to take a look. After the presentation, I'll be happy to show this to you. It's an amazing piece of information for us living in Oklahoma and for any other state that you're viewing from. If you see what's changing in your world, if you've got a breeding bird atlas program, check it out. It's a very, very helpful piece of information to know about. And then talking about the things that we see. I mentioned today that we can have all the information in the world. We can do all the research possible. And it doesn't extend past that unless you go out and talk to people about it. So having the information out and available to the world is a huge part of what we do at Sutton. Go ahead and click for me here. And it's extended so far that this has actually been a huge part of national news. Again, this is one of the eagles that was present during our days of having the breeding eagles on site. Excuse me. This is Ben Sar, one of our eagles that was at the site for a very, very long time. Actually projected onto the Empire State Building, and has been projected on other buildings as well. But this is something that was photographed by, again, Mr. Joel Sartore, included in his photo art, and a very important part of our sharing of this passion we have for the birds and for our wild spaces with the world. Now, I'm not going to talk the whole time. I did promise to leave a little space for Caitlin here. Here's your clicker.
I need it for official business.
She's for official clicking business. And she's going to talk about some of our education birds.
Okay. This is them. I'll talk about each one. Next slide, please. So Artemis is our red-tailed hawk. Well, I guess I should back up a little bit first. All of these birds are at the headquarters in our education barn. I'll talk about it a little bit more on each bird, but we take some of them out. Some of them don't go out yet, but the goal is eventually they will all go out on programs. They'll come talk to people like you. They'll be with the education team. Yeah, it's just a really cool thing, and it lets people experience birds. So first off is Artemis, and she is a red-tailed hawk. If you don't know why they're called that, Artemis has this beautiful red tail. And these are, I'm sure most of you have seen a red-tailed hawk flying around Bartlesville even. They're pretty common around here. She is a really well-trained bird. She can step on a glove, she gets on a scale, she goes in a crate. Daniel has mostly trained her. He did a great job. And let's see. A lot of people ask, like, why do we have this bird? Did we just go buy a bird? Did we take a bird out of the wild, make it our education bird? No. She was hit by a car, unfortunately. She went through physical therapy, rehab, and she did really good, actually. But when they were doing her final inspection to see if she could be re-released, a vet noticed that one of her eyes does not work due to the car accident, and so she wasn't eligible for re-release. That's how she ended up being an education bird. But it's good for her. She's happy. She gets fed every day, which might not happen if she was in the wild. You know, it's very boom and bust for a bird of prey. So I think they're pretty happy. This is Koska. She is a crested caracara. We don't have these in Bartlesville, but how we were talking about making new bird surveys and monitoring birds, these birds have a nest in Oklahoma now. There's at least one nest, which would not have been a thing even 10 years ago. It's very, very recent that they've started moving across our border. You would usually see these down in Texas, Arizona, that area. They're very smart. You can identify them by, I call it a mullet, but this is her crest. And let's see, what? She was injured too. I want to say she got caught in fishing line.
So she had a prior injury. She does show us quite a bit. So just in human interactions, don't come in one size fits all. And a lot of times, those of us that care most about our wild spaces can inadvertently impact them in negative ways. I am a huge fisherman. If you know me at all, I've probably been fishing with you. But this bird did have a couple of interactions with people that ended in negative ways. One of which is the loose fishing line. She ended up having fishing line wrapped around her toe, which did impact her ability, but not by much. I will say that she is a very capable bird. She can still take small flights despite a little damaged wing and gets around very well. She's very fast and, like Caitlin said, extremely smart, which is why she likes Caitlin way better than me.
She does love me. Me and this bird are besties. She's very smart. Like the intelligence of a crested caracara, they're said to be as smart as a crow, basically. So they do puzzles and stuff like that, a lot of them that are in captivity, and that's, oh, how big is she? She is slightly smaller than the red-tailed hawk. She weighs
So about the size on screen?
no, she's bigger
Are
than,
those 2x6s, the planks?
Oh, I'm just curious.
Yep, so this is actually a 1.5 by 6 that's been
So
slotted.
it's a 6.
But yeah, that's 6
So
inches.
6, that's 18.
So in reality, she's about yay tall. If she stands up tall, she'll get taller. Unlike our hawk that tends to be more upright, she's going to spend a lot more time in this position. So you'll see a change in position when she's walking around and being cautious. Here she's doing what's called a ruse. She doesn't always look like this. She's doing that as kind of a comfort signal. She'll shake all those feathers out. So if you've ever seen a bird at your bird feeder do that little shimmy and shake, get all those feathers, that's what she's doing. And just caught a beautiful picture of that. But at different times, she will absolutely slick all of her feathers down and appear to be much smaller. So these birds are very different, and if you'd like a chance to see one in person, as y'all are in our neighborhood, feel free, schedule a visit with the Sutton Center, and we'd love to have you visit. I'm sure Costco would love to see you as well.
well, and one last thing. I could talk about her forever, but I'll keep it very brief. She is very expressive through actually the color of her face. So if a stranger comes in, she's going to have a very pale yellow face. She's going to be scared. When she sees me, it's hard to tell, but it'll get very bright orange. She's like, oh, that's the mouse and chick lady. I'm about to get food. And so she's so happy. But yeah, it's really cool how her face changes color. And she might remind you of a vulture. They actually do hang out with vultures in the wild. They will preen vultures. They'll eat at the same sites. They can go for live prey, but they'll scavenge too. They're very opportunistic. Crickets. I'm sorry if anyone here does not like owls. I know they're not for everyone. He is a great horned owl. You guys have maybe seen them in the wild.
I've heard them at 3 a.m.
Yes, they're very loud, very vocal. They have, I hope I'm saying it right, plumicorns? Yep.
Flipcorns, yep.
Plumicorns. 2 of them. That is why they get their name. It's a great horned owl. So he did not get injured like Coast Gun Artemis. He was picked up when he was a fledgling by some well-meaning people. They saw a little bird, a little baby owl not in its nest. They're like, oh, we need to help this owl. Well, what they did was he ended up getting kind of imprinted on people. He didn't learn to hunt food for himself. He would not make it in the wild, and if you did release him to the wild, I feel like he would probably fly up to random people trying to get food from them, which isn't ideal. You don't want a giant owl flying at random people. So that's why he lives with us. He does really similar stuff to Artemis. He gets in a scale, he gets in a crate, he gets on glove, and he actually does flight demonstrations. So if you do ever come out to the headquarters, I will bring him out in the hall, and you can see how quiet he is when he flies. But he's very loud otherwise. He makes really cute noises when he eats. Due to being an imprint, he still thinks he is a baby owl. And so you get to hear the cute little baby owl noises, which is why he's named Cricket. It's kind of like chirping. Scout. This is our newest addition. He is a little American kestrel. If you guys don't know, it's a really small bird. He is actually the smallest falcon in North America. He is another imprint. He was never injured or anything like that. Like I mentioned, he is our newest addition, but he already can get on the scale by himself. He gets on glove, and he's going to be doing free flight programs as well. So hopefully by the time you guys visit, I can do a flight demo with Scout as well. And kestrels are actually really cool. They're known for like hovering over their prey, and it just looks like they're standing still. So if you're ever driving around and you see, I see them in Bartlesville a lot actually, you see a small little, it looks like a bird of prey, it is a bird of prey, just hovering there, it's a kestrel most likely. And, oh, I'm sorry. You can see he's kind of doing a ruse here. He's a little fluffed up. He gets more fluffy than this. I wish I'm going to eventually get a picture of it. He looks exactly like a little puffball. It's really cute. Okay. And we have our galliforms, which is chickens, turkeys, pheasants, etc. We have 3 Cochin chickens. The chickens are really good because we can bring them to people, especially kids who maybe have never interacted with a bird, and they get to touch and feel and understand like how soft a bird can be. They're very familiar. A lot of people around here have chickens. We have Cochin chickens specifically because they are very broody. They were actually bred for their broodiness, which if you don't know what broodiness is, it just means you really want to sit on an egg. If there's an egg around, you'll sit on it. And the Cochins were actually, before incubation was like perfected for the eagle eggs, they were the ones hatching eagles, which is kind of crazy to think a little bitty chicken would hatch an eagle egg, but that's how broody they are. We have the, I'm probably going to say it wrong even though I just practice it, Narragansett turkeys, which they're a cross between wild and domestic turkeys. They're another bird that it's just really cool for people to come out and see how the tom like works his tail against the hen and various stuff like that. And then Turbo, our golden pheasant, is a very smart bird. She's very well trained. She does free flights. She gets on your hand. She'll do anything for a mealworm, really. She loves mealworms. And she is someone that goes to different classrooms. She meets a lot of children. She's not, the intimidation factor isn't there with her like it is when you're standing right next to Artemis. So she's a really good ambassador too. We're really lucky to have all of these ambassador birds.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Okay.
All right, I'll just stay right here. This is working for me. All right, so I'll talk about a couple other things. Our eagle camera, I mentioned this earlier today. We are no longer raising eagles in Oklahoma. We don't need to. They're doing it for themselves, right? We still want to showcase them. We still want to share that with you guys. So we've set up a camera. This camera that we have set up and running right now is just down the hill from our site. We can literally watch these eagles. I was in our meeting room today, and they came and flew up to branches that I could literally see from our window. I want you guys to have that same experience. Go online, suttoncenter.org. There's a camera link to view the eagle camera, and you can watch these birds as they are prepping their nest. Right now they're in nest prep mode, so it's really neat to see. Won't be too long, and we'll be seeing eggs. We'll see those birds 24/7 on the nest. If you're not seeing, if you go to our website and you don't see an eagle on the nest, don't be too sad. We've actually got a function that you can go back in time. Go look about 7:30 today. You'll see those birds. They're there and they're adorable. But it's thanks to community cooperative works for people that care, that said, hey, you've got this idea, we can fund it. Let us help you share this with the world. So wherever you are, you don't have to be in Bartlesville to see our eagles. Check out our website and consider supporting us in the works that we do. Programs to support the eagles don't always necessarily involve viewing eagles. Again, an avid outdoorsman myself. One of the biggest things you can do if you're an outdoorsman is to reduce the amount of lead that you leave out in our environment. We know lead's not good for you. We've taken it out of our paint, we take it out of our gasoline, cosmetics, and any number of other products, but we're still putting it out into our environment, and we'd like to see that reduced voluntarily. Go out and, instead of buying your lead shot, pick an alternative. There's plenty of out there. If you have any questions, again, reach out to us. We'll help guide you in that respect. And this is something that's very current. Right now, we are collecting art for our Sutton Art Award. This award is very special to me. Not just people that are environmentalists, not just people that are focused on biology as a major. These are artists. These are people that know how to communicate with their works to the world. And I want them to share that with a little bit of a conservation mindset. So all in high school, Oklahoma high school students, so I'm sorry for all of you not in Oklahoma, but if you are in Oklahoma, take a look because you can enter to win some additional money for yourself in scholarship and to the teachers. So if you're a teacher, promote your students to enter this award. Maybe we'll get some additional funding for your classroom. But this is very often a chance to gain that experience and exposure and talk to other artists that work in the conservation realm. So very, very impactful. If y'all have any questions, again, reach out to us. We're happy to field any questions. That does about wrap up my time. I want to have some time for questions, so I appreciate you guys being here. Again, we're with the Sutton Center here in Oklahoma, and thank you for your time. All right, open for questions if anybody has any. I see a lot of faces I've seen before, which is really nice. And if you want to ask Caitlin, you can grill her, and if she doesn't know the answer, I'll do my best.
Do you have any idea how big that nest is locally, as far as weight or how wide it
I don't know
across?
about weight. I can tell you I've stood in it. It is literally, I can go like this and be on, and it's still past me.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So it's absolutely, if there weren't eagles flying around protecting it, you could crawl up and take a nap in it. It is huge. And a lot of that comes from year after year. So each year, those eagles are going to build up and build up and build up and expand on that nest site. Our eagles will have a home range, a mile, 2 miles maybe, that is their space. This is where they are. This is where they're going to nest. But oftentimes they have more than one nest. This pair that we have the eagle camera on actually has a second nest. So depending on the year, they may pick one nest over another. We've been fortunate in the last 3 years. They picked the nest that I have the better camera on. So that's helpful. The bad news is, despite my best efforts and having an amazing camera, it's in a place where you don't have great internet. So oftentimes the internet is our limiting capacity. So if you see that camera buffering, shoot us a message and I'll just drop the resolution a little bit. We had that problem a lot last year. I've changed a few settings, lowered the refresh rate a little bit, so hopefully it's a smoother, more enjoyable viewing experience this year.
When the storms came through last May, did that affect you at all?
No, I was inside.
What about the little birds? Were they scared?
So the little birds, we do have, 2 years back when we had a storm, there was a night that the storms were really bad. We had 3 chicks sitting in the nest. I went to bed watching those birds. I woke up the next morning and one's gone. So the storms can have a huge impact. Eagles have something really, really helpful when it comes to a bird that's only making one clutch, which is that not all the eagles are making nests and eggs and eaglets at exactly the same time. So instead of having a timed event, all of our eagles in Oklahoma are not going to have eagles in the exact same stage. So you're going to have some that are more prepared and some that are less prepared for that environmental factor. So as a group, they're able to weather those storms fairly well. As an individual, sometimes you see a nest being blown out of a tree. Those nests are big, they are heavy, and trees, they're just trees. They're great. We build our house out of wood, but one tree by itself, over time, can only support so much weight, and so we do see those fall from time to time. There have been instances where artificial platforms have been built on their previous sites, and you just stick the nest back up there and they come back to it. Sometimes they don't. But part of it is a numbers game. If you've got over 300 nesting pairs in Oklahoma and something happens to a nest, as heart-wrenching as it is, for from a species perspective, having 299 weather the storm is a great outlook. And there's also a good chance that those adults will come back and still nest again next year. I hope that answered the question. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So there were studies done about, in Yellowstone, like the Wyoming area,
Yes.
when they reintroduced the gray wolf to the
Mhm.
area, how that impacted the landscape, just for having the apex predator back in the area.
Yep.
Does that have similar effects with birds? Does that, are there small, I mean, it won't be on such a large scale because they're not a large predator, but does that have similar effects when you take a bird whose, population is nothing and bring it back? Does that change?
Yep.
Just like,
Absolutely, is the short answer. So this can be its own full talk,
Yeah.
which is really neat, and I'm excited.
I love it. I love it.
But the long and short of it is our apex predators, our raptors, our birds of prey have a significant impact on the populations of everything they feed on. If you've got a population of field mice and those go unchecked, essentially the field mice that are able to produce the most just keep producing, as opposed to those that are the healthiest or most fed. And that's what we see in Yellowstone with some of their ungulate populations and other small mammals. With our birds of prey, hawks, you see a lot of hawks here in Oklahoma, right? Those guys are helping keep your fields from being overrun with small rodents.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, they are not looking for your cat. They are not looking for your chihuahua. But if you are in a space where you are letting a small chihuahua run out into a field full of hawks, that's on you. I am an owner of pets. I love my dogs. I have a cat, inside cat, doesn't hunt birds. But keeping a reasonable expectation for how these birds of prey are interacting with our world is part of it. Nothing's going to be a perfect situation, but the health of our apex predators is indicative of the health of the entire ecosystem. So if in these spaces we start seeing our birds of prey go away, that's going to tell me that something down that food chain, something down the line is impacting them. I kind of glazed over it for time, but DDT, the chemical that was found to be contributing to our eagle eggs not producing eagles, that was really only removed from our regular use, not because the eagles stopped having eagles, but because people cared that the eagles stopped being there. People caring about the changes in the environment.
And Rachel Carson wrote The Silent Spring.
Yep, Silent Springs, absolutely. And talks about a lot of other conservation-related effects. That era of laws, right? It took people being so passionate that they were willing to say to their representatives, to their people in charge of making the regulations and rules and laws, hey, I don't feel great about the neighbor upstream of me polluting the stream that I fish in. I don't feel great about having the air in the neighborhood that I raise my kids in coming from a smokestack without a filter on the top. People cared and forced these changes. Some things can be voluntary. Some things have to be regulated. There's a balance. And that's kind of not my field of expertise. I'll leave that to people that make the legislation. But my 2 cents is that era, the Rachel Carlson impact from Silent Springs and the subsequent Clean Air Acts, Clean Water Act, those are the reasons that we can go out and have the spaces that we have today, that I can go out to a creek and pull clean fish and feel good eating it. So I hope that answers a part of that.
Do you still work with the people who do the wind farms?
So,
With the prairie chickens?
So part of the lesser prairie chicken surveys is monitoring those spaces in Oklahoma. We briefly touched on up north the oil and natural gas industry and some surveys for people that are wanting to put wind farms. Wind farms, and this is a controversial take, don't put this on the internet, I'll be in trouble. All of our energy sources have their place. Wind gets a bad rap if you're a birder, because birds just happen to migrate in the places that are best fit for wind farms. When you're a wind farm developer, if you don't know or aren't cognizant or aren't regulated into making decisions to account for these changes, then you're going to put it where the wind is the best. That makes sense. It's finding the balance. It's being cooperative in our placement, being cognizant of the impact of these places. So I don't think that wind is bad. I don't think there's an energy source that we have that is universally should be excluded from the conversation. When you stop talking about an option, you're really limiting the availability. So yes is the short answer. We still talk to those people because you need to. You need to have those conversations. Great questions.
If somebody wanted to buy one of those bird atlases, is that something that's possible, or is that?
Yes, absolutely.
Where
Yep.
can that be found?
So we have them at our center, at the Sutton Center. We don't have an online store, unfortunately, and it's really by donation. If you want to stop by and pick one up, I've got one with me. I forget what they're asking for them. I think it used to be $65. Is that still right? I don't know why.
I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
But
I'm kind
I have one with me. I'll let y'all bid for it later. One of y'all make a donation. You can leave with my copy of the Breeding Bird Atlas. Because I think it's important. I want you guys to have that availability. And I want you to be able to see it. So even if you're not taking one home, come look and see what's in these things because it's unique. I can go out and buy a bird book. And they come in 2 flavors. I can get an East Coast book and I can get a West Coast book.
Yeah, we don't get rid of them.
Where's Oklahoma? Well, we get a lot of the eastern side because we're on the east side of the Rockies, but we get a lot of migratory birds and birds from the west as well. So having a book that distinctly talks about what we have here in Oklahoma is special. It is something that we should be proud of.
Where does Sibley's fit?
Sibley? Sibley, Peterson, they all have both. There we go. So there's my breeding bird atlas. I had to get a fresh one because I gave away my used one. So I go through these actually more often than I care to admit. But we have our breeding bird atlas, and we also have a wintering bird atlas. The birds that stay here over the winter aren't the same ones that are necessarily here during the breeding season. So we've got two flavors of those bird atlases. I just have this one with me today because if I carry too many books, my back hurts. But if you'd like to take a look, feel free to take a look.
So
Great question.
Want to look at it?
I do.
All right.
So, I was gonna say, on the eagle nest, when do they usually, isn't it like February or March when they lay the eggs, or is that?
Yeah, so
I can't remember.
our eagles are actually one of the later pairs. So if they don't have them laying by the first week of March, I'd be surprised. But they are a little bit on the later side. We do have eagles out there today that have nests with young in them. The eggs have already hatched.
Oh, wow. That quick.
Yeah, it's a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Most of the birds have not. But you're going to see a lot of the birds that are laying January, February. February, March is when you see almost all of them are going to have themselves on. Say again? Go ahead.
We do too.
What were you saying?
They're my tiebreaker books.
Time
Oh,
What
the-
is
span
that?
for breeding suggests a species survival strategy.
Yes, absolutely. Species survival strategy, exactly. You got it.
What's the ratio of Goldens to balls in Oklahoma?
There's a little and a lot. Yeah, so the golden eagles do exist. They're here. They are not as prevalent. I know of a few pockets where I can reliably find a golden, but it's not like going out and seeing any of the waterways here in northeastern Oklahoma. You would be stretched to find a significant waterfront that doesn't have an eagle somewhere on it. I personally, I'm out at Skytook quite a bit, and there are some birds on that lake that don't care if you come way closer than you should be able to because of where they've chosen to put their nests. And then I've got another pair that I go and monitor myself that there's no way to get to it except by boat. And when I start coming around that corner into their cove, they know and they're gone. Like they don't want anything to do with me. Goldens, I have not had a golden that will let you get anywhere near it. But yeah, there's very few goldens. I don't know the exact ratio. I'm sure there might be somebody that has a good guess, but it would just be that. It would be a guess.
Just as a kind of side note on that you might be interested in December, and in January, the Audubon does what's called Christmas bird counts, and it's just volunteers going out. But one of the biologists at Sutton Center organized 2 of them. He organized this one at Hula and one at Tallgrass Prairie. The Tallgrass Prairie was just a couple weeks ago, and they did count a golden eagle out at Tallgrass Prairie just a couple weeks ago.
And at Hewlett,
And a Hewlett.
because we saw it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great. First time, didn't
amazing.
If you hang
Yeah,
around
I've done- I think
waterways,
it's supposed
have
to
you
be
ever
eagle.
seen an
I think it
eagle
does.
harass another
I think it
bird that
does.
was carrying a fish until the point where he dropped it?
Yes.
And did the eagle catch it before it
So-
hit the water?
No, the eagle had to get it
Yes.
from the water.
I have seen it where the eagle
Caught it in
harassed
the air?
another bird to drop
seen
it,
some-
and he caught it before it hit the water.
Wow.
I've seen some videos, but I've never seen them have one, that exact situation. That's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. But that's really neat. That's really neat. And it does. Eagles
And that
are
was it. That was a real
opportunistic.
foot leg.
They are not as successful hunters as your osprey or your merlins. You're going to be seeing eagles taking advantage of situations.
Well, this was an eagle he was harassing an osprey. So the osprey dropped the fish, and he caught the fish before it hit the water.
I believe it. I
Probably in
100%
Florida
believe
or
it.
something. Was that
That was in Reelfoot Lake, Tennessee.
Tennessee? Yeah.
we? We have the northern eagles that come
Mhm.
well, December, January, February, and then they leave. But the southern eagles are here year-round, correct?
Yes. So,
Do they have a territory like this pair down near your center? Do they have like a territory of so many miles and then there aren't other eagles in that territory?
So I'll say northerns are not my specialty, but I will say that it's all based on available resources. So if there is plenty of available resources, competition becomes less of a priority. If you're in an area with more competition for resources or breeding ground, then obviously competition becomes a bigger part of it. I'm glad you brought up the northern and southern bald eagles because I said something that was only partially true today, which was a few things that were on the cusp there. But the bald eagles being not found in Oklahoma whatsoever is true in that they're not breeding. They're not the southern bald eagles. If you did see a bald eagle during that period after their extirpation, say that word? Extirpation. I can always count on Tristan. After their extirpation from Oklahoma, it would have been a northern bald eagle that was coming down for a few months and then leaving. You weren't seeing those breeding birds. We still have those northerns that come in, and they are noticeable. Like, they are much larger. If y'all are used to looking at eagles, so when you see a northern, during those months, you know that that's a northern. It's hard to not spot them unless they're very, very high up. But yes, we had, when I give the long version talk about our bald eagles, we talk about the differences in our northern and our southerns. In the same way that we talk about our birds from Florida that were southern bald eagles that we took up here to Oklahoma and then spread throughout the southeastern United States. If we were to go take a northern bald eagle and bring it to Oklahoma, or even the egg and try to incubate those, they're not going to do well. They are not made for it. They are made for those colder climates, and they can't deal with some of the pressures on populations that our southerns can, specifically mosquitoes. Turns out mosquitoes are one of the highest impact killers of northern bald eagles that are spending time in the south. If they're down here when it's a little too warm and there is mosquitoes up and about, that the northerns just can't deal with them. They just can't deal with them.
Grief. There's millions of mosquitoes like in Minnesota. You'd think they'd get.
Yep, but those up in Minnesota are only there for certain times of the year, and they're not carrying the same types of diseases that you find incubated in the warmer. So yeah, it's the diseases. I should specify. It's not the mosquitoes themselves. It's what the mosquitoes are harboring or carrying.
Different antibodies.
Oh yeah. Getting bit from a mosquito in Louisiana is a lot different than getting bit from a mosquito in Minnesota.
Pretty crazy.
Yep. Awesome. All right.
The northerns are usually bigger than the southerns, right?
Significantly. Yep.
Yeah, because
Yep.
the ones we saw in Alaska are a lot bigger than the ones we see down here.
Mm-hmm. Substantially. And as their wingspan's larger, their overall weight is significantly larger, and they tend to be more poofy because they're in that colder environment. All of our eagles are going to have some tolerance, right? You've got a bare foot, but you can have. Oh, Tristan knows this one. How does that blood work back and forth in that foot? Countercurrent heat exchange. All of our birds that are dealing with colder climates can deal with that, but you still got to have a core hot spot. You still have to have a warm core. So those northern bald eagles are just more downy. They have more fluff, essentially insulation to keep them from losing heat. Yeah, great question.
Yes, Tristan?
How does, if you said the southern eagle,
Yes.
their nests are huge. Are the northerns like
Even
extra
bigger.
huge?
Yep. Even bigger. It's yeah.
Big enough to put a Volkswagen in, huh?
Well, in
A beetle maybe.
In Alaska, we toured, and the tour guide said that eagle's nest probably weighed at least a ton.
Yeah, they're huge.
There are,
A ton.
I believe it. I 100% believe it. And they have to be a little bit more, again, a little bit more insulatory, right? A lot of the nests you see up here, they've got that big branch outer area, and then on the inside they put more of the straw and the small things. And the northern bald eagles up there, they're going to need more of that insulatory material, which breaks down over time, becomes adjacent to mud, and seeps in and fills in those cracks between the wood. 1 year, that's fine. You use that nest for enough years, and that weight becomes substantial. Between that and the freezing temperatures and freezing environment they have to deal with, they just have to put up with a lot of weight. Yep.
Do they defecate in the nest?
Sometimes. Oh, in the nest, the adults will be off the side. The young ones, yes. The young ones, especially when they're very young, that straw is going to get nasty.
Yeah.
So
Again,
they just cover it up and build.
you'll see them try to clean it out. How good a job? I can tell you, been in that nest, it smells. Not when there's live chicks in it, mind you, but even after the fact, there's an odor. So yeah, they get poop
dead
there.
fish and all kinds of other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
too.
Yeah, and sometimes they do a better job cleaning it out than others, and sometimes the dinner of one night turns into a toy for the rest of the year. We had a turtle shell specifically that they just keep the shell in there and move it around
They
from
fry
time
it
to time.
Turtle up there?
I have a theory that our eagles are waiting or have become adapted to waiting further in the season because their young aren't being productive in this nest specifically until the turtles start coming out. And this is the nest that we have the camera on, is one of the only nests that I consistently see them bring turtles up to. So I think these eagles just like turtles. Like, I can't say that universally because again, they're very opportunistic. A lot of eagles are raising their young for the most time in spaces where the turtles will not have emerged for the season yet. And by the time they get big enough, they're feeding them big fish and all that. But yeah, the nest we have the camera on is very eagle, is very turtle heavy.
I guess they must
How
be
old is
tasty.
that pair?
I don't know.
Isn't that
I'm not sure how old they are specifically. I can tell you we've had a camera in that area for at least 5 or 6 years that they've been monitored. I feel like there's somebody that will know when they first spotted this pair, but I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you that we pretty much know that it's the same pair each year. When they do come back to the same territory, they're pairing up with that same mate, in the exception that one of the mate no longer exists. If one has died for whatever reason, they will repair up. But the female is missing a little portion of a toe, and so I look for it, and I know that's her. I can also tell the difference in the male and the female. You can't always. You can usually tell if they're right next to each other because one's bigger than the other, and the female's usually a little bit larger. But even if you don't see them together, if you're watching this camera often enough, you'll start to notice that the female's toes are a little bit fatter, a little bit wider than the male's. So even if I just see one, I look at the toes, and even if I don't see that little nub of a toe, if I see her good foot, I can still tell it's her because of that toe. So it's those little things you pick up over time that really, that's not something you can teach to somebody. You just, over time, you observe and you gain a special appreciation.
Right.
It's like Caitlin was talking about some of our education birds. Our owl, Cricket, he is so vocal, very vocal, more vocal than any other owl I've been around. But owls, by their nature, are fairly vocal, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where I am. If I'm coming up the hill, I know if what I'm hearing is Cricket or not. His hoot has a specific tonality to it that I've just, your ear starts picking it up. And whether it's a captive owl or not, if you're in an environment, if you're around your house sitting on your porch, and you hear the same owl over and over again, you'll start to pick up and recognize that's my owl versus some other owl, which is really neat. And I like to share and encourage people to spend time outside because
It's fun.
you can't get it.
Yeah, you're talking about when I was on the Pathfinder once when an owl came and it came right at me and then like poof and went off. It's like, God, it was amazing. You don't hear him. You just hear this kind of a whoosh or the air, and all of a sudden he was about, I don't know, 5 feet from me when he decided to do whatever he was doing. But
Oh yeah, no, I've had a
I
buddy
don't
of
know
mine.
whether I had threatened him or he was defending or if he, I don't know what
If
he was.
he's bombing you like that, you were a little too close to something. He didn't
Yeah.
want you there. Birds will defend, and
It
not
was pretty
always
cool.
in a reasonable fashion. Birds will absolutely defend, and unless there's,
A mockingbird will do that too.
I had a gnat catcher bombard myself and Artemis. I'm out there with this 1,400 gram bird of prey, and this little gnat catcher thought we were just a little too close. I didn't realize he had a nest,
Yeah.
and we were just walking around, taking a walk as you do, and he was dive bombing. And Dan, our resident photographer among all other things, was out with his camera, and Dan took a picture and actually caught it in the background
Oh,
as we were
really?
flying
Wow.
by. Just a blur. You wouldn't even know what it was unless you did. But it never touched me, but it did actually peck Artemis.
Oh, really?
So peck that, and Artemis didn't care. Like literally, it could have been nothing. But yeah, it's amazing how those. All right, sorry to share too much about these little things because I love them and I love sharing them. All right, anything else for today? Because I do want to make sure Caitlin's getting back in time.
Following the legislation, recent legislation declaring the bald eagle a national bird, there was some discussion in the Wall Street Journal, letters to the editor, about why that was such an important symbol, and mentioned that it had been, the eagle had been mentioned many times in the Bible. And there was another letter came along a few days later that said, now, there might have been a translation problem from the Hebrew. That bird that does all the soaring and significant mentions in the Bible, that might have been a species of vulture.
So
Did you follow?
I will tell you that language changes over time, and the conversation between languages is even harder. So the crested caracara you saw today, the caracara is a very special bird historically, especially in Central America, South America. The caracara is identified as the Mexican eagle, despite not being an eagle. Eagle doesn't mean anything in the prior translation because it wasn't even in Spanish. It was the language that the Aztecs used, which is actually the language that was used by the people before the Aztecs, which is where we got the name Coscaquatli, which is where the name that we use, Cozy, came from. So I am fascinated by language and translations, but people with agendas will take liberties to abuse those misunderstandings at leisure. So the bird is more important than the language that we use to describe it, but the language we use to describe it helps us communicate. So,
Okay.
as wishy-washy as that can possibly be, it's important as a symbol because it causes us to feel a way because of the associations that we have.
Right.
The acknowledgement and putting it on a list doesn't do anything to the bird. I've yet to meet an eagle that cared about its name other than the ones that were in captivity. I've yet to meet an eagle that cared about their status unless they couldn't find a place to eat, unless they couldn't find a place to have their nest. So what we do in our environment is going to be way more impactful than any piece of legislation that puts them on a list. Unless that's an endangered species list, because that affords a few more protections. All right, I hope that's part of that. All right, well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out.